Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Propeller Live Forum, December 14, 2022. I see that Chip is not here. Can somebody please message my brother and get him out of bed?
He says he's there.
Chippy's in.
Oh, he is.
He's in.
Okay. Thank you. Today, December's meeting, we have lots of things to talk about. Kind of depends on who's here. But among those topics, we have the picture you're looking at, which is Trapp's P2 based lighting controller, and we've seen pieces of this. I don't know if he's here today or if he wanted to share this a little later in the meeting when it's dark in Tennessee. I think he mentioned something about that, but we could just carry on if he's not here. There are a couple new products to mention. You've seen them before. One is this, the real-time clock add-on board, which Chip and Michael made to go with their file driver system that is in process for flash and then hopefully RAM and eventually SD card. I say eventually because we know that's been hanging around for many years and seems to be a difficult set of engineering constraints. So these are in stock, and I could have put them on sale for you all today, but nobody asked. I even sent an email saying if anybody wants anything on sale, just tell me. But there was no reply, so everything is full price today. And then there's this too, the HD audio add-on set. Next up, we have a board in the works. I'm going to come back to that in a minute because I'm going to have Stephen Morocco briefly show the Spin 1 VSC code extension, which is very similar to the one he's created for Spin 2. So until today, we did have something for Visual Studio Code and Spin 1, but it wasn't really maintained and it wasn't consistent with Stephen's work for Spin 2. So he's released something. Stephen, do you want to show a screenshot of that?
Sure.
Okay. And while he gets ready, some of the other things.
Take over here?
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, you probably
I'm stopping.
Yep.
All yours. And while he gets that ready, some of the other things on the menu today are Chip's video driver and maybe the flash file system update. So
okay, so you see my screen, Visual Studio.
Yep.
On the left edge here am looking at the P1 OBEX, and I wanted to point out some things. That this is what your P1 code looks like now in Visual Studio. This is a Spin file, you'll notice, not a Spin 2 file, and it's doing all the highlighting that you would expect and recognizing arguments, pass parameters, return values, everything. It's kind of entertaining to look at because if there is something wrong with your code, you get told about it pretty quickly. You see these bright red things? This is pretty much because that's missing. And so if you have a variable name that it's not spelled correctly, it's highlighted in your file quite quickly. The full syntax and semantic parsing is occurring and provided now for P1 code just as strongly as P2 code. It will flag anything if you're moving code between the two platforms and you get P2 code in the P1 environment or P1 code in the P2 environment, it should flag itself nicely as I don't know what you're talking about in this environment. So that should help you importing code back and forth. Just to let you know, that's what it looks like. Any thoughts?
Question.
Sure.
Have you come up with the key, the color key yet?
Oh, you asked me for that. I did some dialing in of the of how I'm recognizing everything, and I'm probably a couple hours away from having a color key for you.
Super. Okay.
So I'll get it to you.
No worries. Yeah, that's looking great.
Oh, thank you. Along with that extension, what I didn't show you is that now has custom tabbing, just like Propeller tool, per section. It also has the align mode in insert and overtype modes. And so now you can use align mode to align your columns of text just like you would in Propeller tool. VS Code runs on the Raspberry Pi, it runs on Linux machines, it runs on the Mac, it runs on Windows. So you've got a single editor that runs on all platforms. If you want to work on your desktop and you want to remote into your Raspberry Pis, it also does that as well, where it will copy itself over to the Raspberry Pi, and then you can run on your Windows machine desktop or your Mac desktop and run remotely against your Raspberry Pi. We also can drive FlexProp and Peanut, any command line compilers we can drive as well from Visual Studio Code. So quite capable system. Just wanted you to know that now we fully support P1 and P2. And thank you, Ken.
Super.
And Stephen, would you say that the same general kind of setup applies then that we featured for Spin2 in the VSC Quick Byte when configuring that? Okay.
Yes, it's all. Now, what I didn't show you is here. Let me take over the screen one more time, Ken.
Yeah, you're free to.
What I want to show you is this. This is the single extension that supports now both P1 and P2. So all you're going to do is install the one extension, and it has the tabbing, it has the align modes, it has everything. And here's the release notes for it all.
How do you do that? Because I'm looking at this visual thing right now and I'm lost.
How do we do that in Visual Studio?
Yes.
You see this sidebar on my screen?
Uh-huh.
There's a section called extensions.
Okay. That's,
You type in Spin2.
wait a minute. It's not doing anything. Okay. And where am I typing in Spin2?
Over here on the extensions marketplace column. You see where my cursor is?
I don't have that. It just says, I'm in the get started. Let me get rid of that.
Yeah, get rid of
Oh,
those.
there we go. Okay. Extensions and type in who?
Type in Spin2.
Okay.
And you should see this single extension. And then you type, and then you just select install. Mine's already installed, so I don't have a blue install button here.
Okay.
Select install. And that's pretty much all there is to it.
And that'll do spin 1 and 2 at the same time, or I gotta go find the spin 1.
Nope, that is Spin1 and Spin2.
Okay. And then
Set your color theme here. And I use Iron Sheet for the color theme. And that's it.
okay.
And now you
And
go
then
over,
okay, I'll bug you in a minute.
select your file, and that's it.
Okay.
But
And-
Martin, you still have to identify the location of the compiler and do a little bit of work to set
Correct.
this up entirely, which is documented
In the Quick Byte.
in the Quick Byte. Okay, so there's a link for that. And Martin, I know this is, I think, where you got stuck, but I'm looking at it and it looks like the videos are working. So I'll have to go back and look at your message.
If
So
we could figure out some sort of standard install process, like install location, would it be made that it just also detects the compiler for FlexSpin?
I will. We've had a number of people have problems with where to put FlexSpin on which systems. Let me pay attention to that over the next couple of days, and I'll release an update to my repo documentation, and I'll post it in the extension forum.
No, I was thinking we could probably just generate, at least on Windows, you could generate an exe installer that just puts it into a program file.
You have an issue with all the different systems. Windows has a predictable place. Mac has a predictable place. The Raspberry Pis do not have a predictable place, nor do any other Linux machines.
Actually, you could make a predictable place. You could just say it installs to USR bin something something, and just have that be the thing.
That would be a really bad location for Linux machines. It
No,
should be.
that's where it goes. USR bin. That's where they go.
Well, no, probably /opt/flexprop or something.
Right, /opt or /user
Yes.
local bin, one or the other. Local or opt are the two major conventions out there.
Well,
So-
normally the binaries go in bin. I'm just, okay, but
Well,
whatever.
if they're from the system, and I mean, we could see if about getting, you know, a FlexProp into Debian or something if we want.
Right, if you actually package it with Debian, then it would show up in a formal location. And then it would also be available in the Raspberry Pis as well.
But
you
then
just
you'd have always the outdated version from like whenever Debian updates it.
Negative, Debian updates 24/7.
Yeah, but you don't, unless you use the unstable branch, it doesn't actually do it.
Well, yeah, of course. Of course. Yeah, Raspberry, each distribution based on Debian has their own update cycle. And so it always takes the latest packages up to that point. So yes, Debian is probably by far the preferred way to do it. But meanwhile, I can at least put up a prediction of where you can put it and how you can hook it in such that it works really well, and you can put it in, you install it over the top of itself and it will work really well. So I'll get that going. I left that as a hole in my documentation.
I don't think you should ever put it into where the existing installation is. So I think I had some issue with the include files at one point. Not sure how that works, but I did have to delete them at some point. I don't know.
Yes, typically what I'll do in that kind of environment is I'll move the directory aside so you have the older one and then create the new install, never over the top. And that way you can fall back as well.
Also, the thing. I wrote you an email, but I forgot to reply to your thing.
The tabbing, yes.
The tabbing issue. Let me find one that's.
Oh, let's go into that another time.
Oh, it just takes like 5 seconds to show.
All right.
Okay.
I can do it later, but I could do it now.
Oh, wir sind fertig. Mach schnell.
Okay. Very simple. I just have to find a file first. Always a fun one. It's a file with some spin in it, ideally.
So Ada, while you queue that up, I'm gonna switch over and just show a link to a video about the VSC extensions for Spin 2, and then I'll come back to you.
Good idea.
Okay, no rush on you. Okay, so here's a video that Stephen put together. It's 9 minutes because he's also made improvements to the Spin 2 extension for VS Code with edit mode support and settings walkthrough. So you'll see this featured. If you don't grab this today, I'll put the link here in the chat for you for a second time. And if you're watching this video on YouTube, you could type in the name and I will add this to Parallel Access playlist and feature it also in something I send out by email. So generally, Stephen, how would you summarize this? This is a pretty significant walkthrough.
Yeah, it was actually just meant to show that two things. Settings are extensive. You've got a lot of things you can play with. Also, it shows you how I use align mode. All of us who've used Prop Tool already know this, so that's nothing new. Those of you in Visual Studio that have never used Prop Tool, though, this is a new feature. And so that's why I demoed it. That's pretty much what you're going to see here.
Okay. So if you're using VSC, give that a look. Martin, this would be helpful for you, as well as this quick bite, which I think you're looking at.
Yeah, I'm trying to, I took a screenshot of it, trying to make it bigger so I can type it in and see what happens.
Okay.
I don't think
But check the chat because I just pasted the links in the chat for you.
where's the
And if you, yeah, it's hidden, go to your Zoom settings and poke around and find the chat button. Also, there's an update to the Hub 75 LED matrix driver from Stephen. And that's right here. And I'll just grab this and put this link in chat as well if anybody's using that. We have a few more users I saw recently. And let's see, the driver update gives full 24-bit color and multiple Hub 75 cards. I think Stephen said 3 of them at once under one Propeller 2.
Correct. Since you use socket pairs, the little connector pairs, you can only fit 3 cards, but that's 3 different chains of panels if you want to from one P1. From one P2, sorry.
Excellent. Okay, so next up, unless Ada's ready.
Oh, I can show it.
Okay, I'll stop sharing and then it's all you.
And
so, welcome to the Visual Studio. Problem is, I can tab one in, when I hit backspace and notice it's set to 4 spaces, which it sometimes defaults to. I don't know when it defaults. It just does it It feels like it sometimes defaults to tabs and it's obnoxious. But if you hit backspace, it actually
Okay,
deletes 4
Okay.
spaces instead of deleting
Okay.
the tabs.
Now I know what that is. I'll go ahead and fix that for you.
Now, the
Um,
obvious fix for this is just set to 2 spaces because all the tab sizes are
Yeah,
even.
no,
that
that's not
works,
an
but
option. Yep, with the custom tabbing, that shouldn't be working like that, so I'll fix that.
but ideally it would just backspace to the
Yep.
tab that it should be in.
And do you have,
like
can
this
you
one.
set your, yeah.
Why is this weirdly aligned? I don't know.
Are
And you
you
said
able
what?
to- Are you able to insert your tab line above that so we can see what it looks like?
Above this here.
Yeah, just the control option tab or whatever you use to do that.
I just search for it. Because this is what I use for pretty much everything, but I don't know what it's called. It doesn't tell it.
Control Alt Tab, does that work for you? Are you on a, what kind of machine?
Control Alt Tab. No, that tries to tab switch out
Okay.
out of it.
You have to tell me why it doesn't work.
You
for
have to call the command something sensible because this is what I use 99% of the time. I just go Control Shift P and then just
Gotcha.
search for whatever I want.
I've never looked for my commands that way. I should look that up.
I pretty much always use that because it's the good way.
I understand.
I also use the Control P a lot for actually going between files, as I previously mentioned.
So just so everybody's aware, this tabbing feature is new enough that I'm still expecting that we might find little side cases like this that are not working. So I'm actually soliciting anybody, if they see any issues, just send me email or file it right away at the GitHub issues. And I will be sure to get these updated as quickly as possible so we can just make all these side cases go away.
Great.
I can't find any commands from the extension queues enough. That's better.
Look at your keyboard mapping. Type in spin.
Yeah, but I don't want it on the keyboard. I want it on my command.
I realize that, but it might tell you how to get to the command. Type in spin 2 to filter it.
Oh yeah, I could just.
There you go. So the one I'm looking for is the insert tab stop comment.
Control Alt Tab, which as previously established is not a valid key command because it OS takes it.
Okay. So
That should probably be fixed.
yes, I need to know what it doesn't, what it can map to for you. Then let me know that too.
I don't
Alright.
really want it on a key combination to begin with. I just want it because there's something that you use rarely enough that you can just go into the command palette like that.
I understand. We should move on.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you,
That's-
Otto.
That was the
Thanks,
thing.
Nada. Next up would be this hardware design, but I do want to ask Eric Smith, since he's here, if he has anything to share about FlexProp today.
Really, no, there is a new, I did make a new release earlier this week and it's lots of bug fixes, so I certainly encourage people to update.
Okay, he was a little bit quiet, but I think everybody heard that. New FlexProp release with some bug fixes.
Where is that located?
On GitHub, under the releases.
Okay, I'll try for that. Thank you.
You're going to have to go there to set up VSC too, Martin.
Got it.
Okay, so next up is this this board, currently named the Maxi-Break-Out Board, envisioned by an actual customer application that needs such a board, which you've all seen before, and was quickly scratched together by Michael and Stephen and maybe Chip, and the first I saw it was 5 minutes ago. So the idea here is it's like the mini breakout board, but it has more connectors. And that's pretty much the difference, right, Stephen?
Correct. Correct. It
Okay.
basically gives us access to all the pins.
So my thinking on this, I think we can go ahead and make this. Looks like it's mostly designed. Is there any kind of input on it? That's one of the questions I have for everybody. And then I'm also thinking that it would probably replace the mini breakout board, or it could even be an improvement or revision to that one, so that we don't have too many choices.
Yeah, I think this may be slightly better than the mini breakout board, because I think the mini breakout board, I don't have one, but I always see people like run out of headers on those.
So it's
kind
too
of
many.
silly.
It should be called the micro breakout board then.
Yeah, that's probably a better name.
I think this would be cool if we can get to all the pins. That'd be cool.
So let's see how many pins here. We have at least probably half of them, or is this all of them?
I think that's
Oh.
all of them.
I see them all. 63 and 62 is there.
They're all going to be there. The legend, Michael put this together really quickly, so he hasn't cleaned up all the artwork yet. This was, we talked about it, like started talking about it 2 days ago. Yesterday, he gave me these first drafts of the pictures. So, I mean, it's that fresh.
Hey, Ken, can I ask Michael a question?
Absolutely. If he's
It,
awake.
it looks like the, well, maybe I'm wrong. So forgive me if I'm wrong, but is the upper left header set up so that you can use the ESP8266 adapter on there and do Wi-Fi stuff with it?
Ooh, that'd be smart.
Yes.
Okay. I see I saw the reset kind of, oh, no, oh, I think that's what I was looking for. So, all right, cool.
Michael,
Yeah,
what
actually,
other-
actually, while I'm unmuted, yeah, as Ken said, I just quickly kind of threw it together, really just to see how big it would be, you know, what the sort of dimensions would be. I think there was another photo floating about that showed the provisional dimension, but
You've got that.
certainly I haven't given a great deal of thought to the location of the barrel jack and the prop plug header yet, and I think that's something to consider. Just to mention it actually before I forget, the one new thing on here I think from the Mini is this new 3-pin accessory power header on off, so you can actually disable 5 volts going out to the edge headers, which seems like it could be useful. But that also gives you the opportunity to feed in a different voltage to the 5 volt pins if you wanted to provide, you know, 12 volts, let's say, through the barrel jack, and then have a different 5 volt source going to the headers. It gives you that kind of flexibility. But yeah, but also there's that thing about having the barrel jack coming in at one end and the prop plug at the other. And also they're not therefore going to be the same axis as the breakout boards, because, you know, on the other, with the Mini, with the headers coming out on one side, you know, you've got potentially breakout boards coming out on the side anyway, so you're not really adding any dimensional volume, whereas this might do that if it's in a box or a case, you know, that might be an issue. So there's definitely something to think about there. I wonder what people think about that in terms of, I mean, I know the prop plug in theory is only there temporarily, and you could use a prop plug with a right angled header on it, so your prop plug could, you know, plug down vertically, but you know, the barrel jack is still kind of pointing out a different direction to usual. So it's just making sure this would be useful in most people's cases and not a hindrance, you know, having the cables coming out at each end.
I got a dumb question. Why are you guys not putting the what is that, the FTDI chip and that prop plug stuff on these boards without having to use the prop plug?
Cost.
Okay.
Well, I can answer. I think we figured that because, you know, the FTDI thing is sort of an arbitrary system, and the thing actually speaks serial directly, we didn't want to burden the module with that, because it may in some applications not be needed if you're running off of SD card or something, because that stuff will take quiescent power and just kind of, you know, just be a load that may be used like 0.01% of the time or something.
It's a big discussion usually in our office whether or not to do this, but this gives freedom to use other serial USB devices to, and keeps the cost out of your responsibility. We could sell you one prop plug and then you can buy multiple boards.
Got you. Okay, thanks.
And in the future, you know, there might be much faster serial chips available that we could just upgrade the prop plug to and then run everything at 12 megabaud or something.
Yeah, but nobody likes a bunch of connectors and cables and stuff either. So any more input here before we take this further? It's important because we always spend a lot of time and resources and money and marketing and documentation as we do something like this, even though it looks like a relatively simple board.
What's your view, Ken? What do you think about having the cables coming out at the two opposite ends?
I think like in the one application I'm thinking of, it doesn't really matter because it's going to go in a box. When it's sitting on your desk, yeah, we normally haven't done this, but you're trying to keep it tight and small.
Can you put it on sale today? I'll buy one.
It'll take 2 months to have this in your hands.
Okay.
Right.
Let me mention, I've got a couple of the mini boards, and I like to put a switching supply, one of those little tiny ones that has the same form factor as a 7805 sort of thing. Put that in series. I can use a 5-volt input. I can put 12 volts in. You might consider having some solderable pads with a jumper that I could cut or someone else could cut and wire in something like that.
Yeah, that's a good point. And actually, could I also ask, did anyone ever make use of the little mini proto, or should I call it micro prototyping area that was on the other board? There was a couple of arrays of, I don't know, it was like 5 by 6 holes or something.
I think someone tried to put like a PS RAM on one of those and it didn't work. I think that's the only time I've noticed someone use it, but who knows what people do in the privacy of their own homes.
Quite.
Better question is, why doesn't it work? Is there something with this edge connector that can't handle high-speed signals? That's kind of interesting.
And I flip between projects so quickly that I don't ever customize these boards.
Yeah, I think that was kind of my hunch. So I think we'll just leave that off this time. It's one of those odd things that it looks quite innocent there, but actually creates a real, yeah, that's it there, Ken, in the middle. But it creates a real job for manufacturing because of those holes. You have to mask them off with Captain before you can run it through that flow solder machine. So it really it's one of those things that looks like a good idea, but just causes an awful lot of effort. And if it's not, that's okay, of course, if it has a valid purpose. But if it's not really being used, then it could probably go.
I can tell you, Michael, I will get feedback from the person that's considering this, but also I'll be happy to not have the power and the prop plug so close together. They've always been very tight for me.
Well, yeah, it's kind of neat though, having them all tucked away and all the cables at one end.
Sure.
But yeah, there's lots of, yeah.
Well, if anybody's afraid to talk about their opinion, you could leave it in the chat in regards to the cable coming off of one end.
Would there ever be a value in having an adapter that would plug onto that 10-pin header to adapt to a prop plug, so that the prop plug header wasn't necessary? I mean, I know it kind of gets in the way if you've got an additional board there, but just wondered about, you know, a simple little 10-pin to 4-pin adapter that could be like a part of the prototyping process that you could remove after, just to help reduce the cost of the
That would sit over the same, you're thinking that would sit over the same connector as the Wi-Fi module then?
Yeah, yeah, right. Which maybe is, or you could get into a situation where it was like a little shim, right? It had like a male-female set of pins, and you could sort of stack up on top, like a shield almost, but
Right, stack it with a Wi-Fi module.
yeah, I mean, I think in this case, you've got it because of the spacing that was chosen with the headers, the board is sort of big anyway, or it's not going to get any smaller if you want all the pins broken out. So it's not as if you're going to save a whole bunch of space by removing that, but
Right. Especially in this case, since the headers are already there, occupying that space, so it'll just hollow out where the prop plug connects.
would there be any value in that power being able to select to like a 3-volt instead of having 5 volts down there? And it's nice to be able to move that jumper, but is there any other way that you'd want to be able to jumper that 5-volt terminal to a 3-volt, or you just want to strictly leave that pin as 5 or nothing?
I think all the accessory, I think because all of the P2 accessories have 5 volts there, it might just add confusion. It might become redundant, I think, to have. And also there is 3 volts at all of the headers as well.
Right, yeah,
So
on
all
the B pins there, yeah.
Yeah. So it's I suspect that might be redundant. I like the thinking about the prop plug though. Definitely that will definitely be on my mind as I kind of think over the final layout for this. If there's
Yeah,
anything we can do there.
It takes a while for these things to take shape.
Mhm.
What about the mounting holes? I see you've got it looks like it's probably connected to ground, or is that floating?
Yeah, ignore all the traces and the ground at this stage. They will be connected to ground in theory. That would be the aim. And they're not necessarily in final positions either. I just kind of copy pasted what we had originally, and that's kind of where they ended up. And I can see they're not entirely centered either, which is quite irritating to look at now. But anyway, this is a rough idea.
And
but I
thank you
kind
so
of
much
figured
for
having
turning
the
this
extra
so
2
quickly.
holes in the middle might be useful because it's quite a long board.
Mhm.
Any chance of getting a power switch like the Johnny Mac board?
Maybe not.
Why not?
Well,
True.
let's
Hold the thought.
hold that thought. Yeah.
Comment noted.
Yeah.
I just find it a pain pulling the jack out, especially when you've got a lot of things plugged in. You can actually accidentally pull the prop plug out at the same time.
I know you're super busy. You got a lot going on.
Well,
Really hate to
yeah, that feeds back into what Stephen was saying, I guess. Maybe we've solved that by locating the barrel jack at the other end of the board now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I could also say that I addressed that same problem by having inline switches on all my end cable connectors.
Yeah.
So I have
Okay, so it sounds like a power switch might be a favorable thing if it doesn't, if it's not an mission impossible to do. Okay.
Yeah, and
Noted.
thanks, Michael, for just impromptu being put on the spot, because I don't think you expected me to share your pictures.
No, I was quite surprised. That's good.
You know, anything that comes in my box, usually I ask permission, but if there's something to share, I do that.
Hey, Ken, have you got the photo with the dimensions on there? Just real quick.
Do.
I think it was like 140 long or something. Oh, I forget now.
Yeah, this thing is almost like a Subway sandwich, isn't it?
Yeah, the width is provisionally the same as the previous breakout board, just the length.
Right. Width is. Is Ken finding the picture?
Yeah, I'm looking. You might find it first. So hang on a second.
Anyway, maybe we can kind of visualize it. It's probably sort of twice the length and a bit less.
Okay, looks like I'm sharing it now.
It's the one with the blue background, Ken.
Yeah, all right. Looks like it opened up another version of the
there you go
photo editing tool. So how about this?
Almost.
Is that the right one?
There it is.
Yeah, that's the one. So what's that? Oh, 114 millimeters.
By 36, yeah.
Yeah, so the 36 is the same as the existing product. And the yeah, I measured the barrel jack distance to the board edge there because I was just comparing that to the length of a typical barrel connector to see how far it'd stick out.
Mhm.
The typical connectors are about 30, as I recall. So yeah, still sticking out quite a long way. You know, if we didn't have the connector centered, then you could potentially have that barrel jack pushed back and the cable.
Okay, well, I'm going to keep this moving along.
Anyway, yeah, yeah.
Make a forum thread, whatever, and we'll proceed.
Right on.
Right on. Okay, does anyone have any topics now before we maybe go towards Chip and here, and maybe you can show us the video driver with the cool font.
If you have a minute, Ken, I can share a new
Please.
company produced.
Yeah, all yours.
Do I have share capability?
You do.
Okay. Oh. This is not a great picture, but can you see my screen with a bunch of red LEDs and a little? Yeah. So this is a laser tag accessory that we kind of, I don't want to say rushed, but we didn't have a lot of time to do this. And it was a gigantic hit. Now, again, this is really simplistic in the world of reality, but our customers went bananas and insisted on giving the company money, even though we said, we're not going to deliver this until next June. They said, we don't care. Take our money. Here's orders, yada, yada, yada. Now, this is prototyped on a P1 because I have SD card for the P1. I need SD card for the P2 for the production because on this, it's supposed to be a multi-game piece. At a trade show, nobody, we could show the menu. So you'll see this is what I do all those
Your next gen display?
Yes, thank you. Yeah. Yeah. So I actually put my work to work. Now, what I did, and I'll put this into the forums at some time. This is obviously running on a P1. We had done next gen on the P2, but what I did was I wrote a really minimalist serial driver and then wrapped all the next gen code around that. So I have a really nice, clean next gen object that you can drop into anything. And it will do all of the stuff that we did during the demos and more. There's more, I've learned more since. So this is the user interface. All the programming is set up here. This is on a scoring screen. Again, sorry, it's not a great picture. Josh did this kind of in a rush for me. But one of the fun things I learned about the next gen and playing with it is that they have, some will remember when we did a class, is that they have a widget that is a progress bar. You can, in that widget, you can put custom graphics into it. So we have A and B teams that compete against each other, Alpha and Bravo. So these are Alpha and Bravo bullets that fill up as your score increases. And it just made it, people thought that was really nifty and cool. These are, if it's not obvious, these are WS2812 LEDs. And what we did, because our boss wants to make different versions of this with taller towers. This is called Domination Tower. So these boards we call our Lego LED boards. So they're 3/4 inch wide circuit boards that have 5 WS2812s, and then they have kind of a tongue and groove system where we can just line them up on a desk and lap solder them together, and away we go. And then they have connections on the top and the bottom so that in the programming thing, this is a 3-sided tower. And so there's 45 LEDs in this particular thing. And, it starts from here, goes here, and it goes down to the bottom and comes up. So the traces are on the board. So you only have to connect the power and the signal at the top between the first and the second and third boards, and it wraps all the way through. And so anyway, simple, there's a lot of code. We could only fit the one game into the P1 because of the audio stuff. That takes a lot of code space in the P1. but people liked it because it talks to them, it tells them what's going on. It communicates with the gaming control system through XP. It has a really nice menu setup system that, you know, we spent a lot of time on the next gen creating really nice menus and a system that flowed really nicely. And it proved out because we showed the customers, you know, a very quick demo, and they took off. They had no problems being able to configure it to do what they wanted. And then it, you know, it gives them an accessory to make their laser tag games a little more fun. So not earth shattering, but people like new stuff, as Ken knows. That's why he's always rolling out new products. People like new stuff. And this was new and an improvement on a gaming piece that we had done a couple of years ago. Anyway, made people.
John, are you using the P2 Edge in there?
No, this is using a P1.
P1.
I needed to play WAV files. So I really need an SD driver for the P2. That's the only piece I'm missing, because we're also now, this month, we've started writing the specification. This down here in the corner, that's the butt of the laser tag. That's a P1 laser tag. That's the final version of code we delivered this year. We can't, there's no space left in the P1.
I did have a SD driver that's written in pure spin PASM, so not the flex spin one that's in C, that had audio driver built in, but it doesn't really play wave files. It plays just raw audio files.
I only need to open and access a file. I've written my own wave player that's used in several commercial products. I just need access to the files on the SD card. I don't need a wave player. I know how to do that part.
Oh no, the nice thing about this is that it spawns a cog that reads the SD card and it does the audio in the background.
I don't want you to do the audio for me. I want to do it myself.
I mean, you can just hack it if you really do want it.
Well, I'll contact you offline and I'll have a look at it. But, you know, I just keep seeing all these horror stories in the forums about SD drivers for the P2 reformat.
Oh yeah, that one also, that one at least doesn't reformat your SD card. I fixed it often enough that it shouldn't.
Yeah,
Hexagon, it sometimes doesn't start playing audio for some strange reason, but I'm not sure what the.
But you see, Ada, I'm actually delivering thousands of devices to customers. I can't have those kind of things. That's fine for experimenting at our desks, but I'd be fired if I delivered a product to my boss that occasionally just deleted all the files off the SD.
I mean, if you're reading only, you could just delete all the code that does the writing, and
I'll have a look at it. But
we want Ada's
the best one is definitely the one that the best one's the one that's bundled with FlexSpin. That one is fast. That one is good. That one has directories. That one has long file names. It has everything, and it's based on an
I use standard
library.
spin, though. The standards of our companies, we do our development in standard spin, not compiled.
Yeah, that's kind of the issue, because you don't get the
that's fine. It's our issue.
We
made that choice and we're happy to live with it. But what I'm hoping, because I know Chip's working hard on the Flash file system. What I'm hoping long term, I think it'd be really neat to be able to have a combined Flash SD system, especially if it works with the kind of the setup that is on the edge boards, where the signals are commingled, and where maybe we're treating the Flash as one drive and the SD as another drive. If we think of it as like a computer thing, but
yeah, that'd be pretty useful. You could probably do that with FlexSpin BFS too. I think someone has written a driver at some distant point, but it's not included. That's kind of obnoxious.
At any rate,
so we need that working on P2 at some point then.
Yeah, because we're doing, we're looking to sell between 15 and 25,000 P2 laser tags next year. So we really need that. And then this,
we do.
Because of the popularity of this, we want to put it on. What we're trying to do now is take, we've been doing P1 stuff since 2016. And with the P2 and the capabilities and the space, we just want to transition all new products to the P2. So right now, I've done all the drivers that I've ported all of the P1 code, because we have custom infrared in and infrared out. We have, obviously we're doing XP. So I have our XP software, our XP thing that deals with how we do XP messages, etc. I have all that stuff working on the P2. I just need the ability to read and write files on an SD card from the P2. And then I can have a laser tag, P2 laser tag. And this thing.
Yeah. Good stuff, Johnny Mac. So for the P1, for everybody who counts on us for some supply of that, today we placed a pretty big 6-figure order for P1 chips because the lead times are going crazy and costs keep going up. So we've thrown our money into inventory, and the lead times for us now are up to a year to get die. I know. So, and we're a small player, so we don't count. And sometimes we have to beg, and then we have to push and fight and scream. And then every time we do that, we talk to new people at the foundry, and it's restarting everything all the time, as you guys can imagine. But we're working hard to make sure we have chips always, and especially a year from now, not knowing what our customers are doing sometimes. For the P2 also, we placed some big orders, but really the P1's the bulk of the production.
Not that it'll change your life, Ken, but you should be hearing from Josh sometime soon about an order for us for P1s, because we still have to produce a current tagger of the P2.
I'll be ready to close the deal and pass them to my colleagues who add insurance and upsells.
And John, you're having too much fun. Those are fun projects.
I tell you what, this, I was, because we had a deadline of a giant trade show. For those who don't know, there's a trade show called IAAPA in Orlando every year. And so if you ever wondered how roller coasters get sold, they get sold at this particular show. If you go there, the roller coaster people set up their roller coasters in the parking lot. It's the craziest trade show you've ever been to. Now, it's all about games and entertainment and stuff. So we're one of the many laser tag players. But we didn't have a lot of time, and our boss really wanted something that was different. So Josh my colleague Josh, he went out and bought 6 or 7 3D printers, because he had 3D printers running at his house 24/7. And I was getting up at 4 a.m. and going to bed at 11 p.m. every day for about a month to get all of the code working cleanly. In the end, it worked. And that's the only measure. As soon as Josh said it's perfect, and customers were thrilled, and the owner of the company called me and said, "Thank you, that was fantastic. Our customers are thrilled. They love it." That's the best part of the job, right? Is when you have a customer. And this is why, for those who wondered, so Stephen mentioned me kindly last time we had one of these meetings, because I think Michael had contacted me about this project, this sign project, and I was in the middle of this, and the sign project was really played to Stephen's strengths far more than mine. So when I called him, so this is what I was doing while Stephen was working on the bike path signage thing, which was a fantastic project, and well done on that, Stephen.
Thank you. A lot of fun too.
Okay, any more sharing of similar type things? Or we can have Chip talk about video driver. Wow. I heard a comic book character somewhere.
Yeah.
Okay. Skippy, you out there?
Yes, I am.
What you got?
All right. Well, I'm really struggling with trying to, okay. My interest is in fitting as much highly legible text on the screen as possible. And this has application to anything that has low array sizes, like large LED panels, that you'd use in like a commercial, like outdoor lighting or something. So I've been working on some fonts. It's just kind of a sidetrack from the file system project, but I got off on this tangent. I'm trying to see, like, what can I achieve?
Okay, wait a minute. People are going to want you to repeat those last 2 sentences.
About what?
A tangent from the file system.
Yes, a tangent from the file system. I've been on a tangent for like a couple of weeks.
This has happened before. I hear the crowd mumbling.
Yeah.
Carry on.
Is Michael Parks still here? He is. Okay, so this would apply to like maybe Michael Parks' interests, but it's kind of an interesting problem to figure out how you can fit lots of legible text on a screen, because I want to be able to see lots of code, right? Because our code is what we got to work on all the time. And the more of it you can see at once, even if you're not working at a super zoomed out level, you can maintain a mental model of where you're at and what you're doing, and it just makes it easier. And also I noted a huge improvement on all this has been like the code highlighting, where you have different colors for different things, and you have bold and normal. All this stuff helps you to make sense of your code, and it like feeds your brain more information so that you can be more familiar with what you're working with. Because always the problem is when you're working on a project is keeping your bearings, right? When you have a lot of code and there's a lot of stuff in it, it's just hard to, it's important to be able to maintain awareness of everything. So anyway, I have been working on these fonts. I thought, traditionally, like on, let's say, an old school computer, a font gets kicked out, just it's an on pixel or it's an off pixel, right? So everything looks kind of dot matrix like. And so in the shifter in the P2, we can do that, but we can also do like 2-bit pixels. So I thought, what if we had like 4 levels of opacity, right? That can be denoted by 2 bits. So 0 combo means completely use the background color. 0 1 could mean like use 1/3 of the foreground or the character color and 2/3 of the background, and then vice versa for 1 0, and then 1 1 could be like fully use the foreground color. So it turns out that this can enable like very small pixel count fonts to look really good. And the PC's been doing this for a long time. When they, render a vector font on a screen, they kind of map it into the pixels using 8 bits for R, G, and B. But that starts taking a lot of memory. But if you have all that color bandwidth, then it doesn't really matter if you're super registered up to a pixel or not, because the pixel what might have been like square on 1 pixel can bleed into the next by changing the gray levels between the two. So you can effectively like shift your brain's perception of where the dot is by changing the gray level on 2 adjacent pixels. That makes sense? It's anti-aliasing. So anyway, I've got this one font. Let me show it to you here. Now I've been playing around like mad with, I have a camera here. And if you've ever tried to put a camera on a screen, you have these horrible bloom problems because the sensors in the camera always they're just hypersensitive to what's coming directly in the form of light towards the camera. Now our eyes can look at a screen and it looks just fine. It can be bright, high contrast, but you put a camera on it and you get this bloom that just blows out of control and you can't see anything. So earlier this week, I got that thing you told me about, Michael, the HDMI digitizer, but it turns out you need Windows 10. I only have Windows 8 and it just would not work on my machine. So I'm back to using the documentation camera pointing at the screen. So I just now, when you guys were talking, when John was talking, I took apart a pair of sunglasses and with a piece of tape, I hung the sunglass over the sunglass lens over the camera. So I'm getting a little bit better video because I'm having to lower the luminance so much that it starts to like lose dynamic range. By the time I lower the luminance and it's not blooming on the camera, then the grayscales are not working. Everything looks paltry. So putting a sunglass over the lens has helped. All right, so I'm going to show you something here.
Chip, the next time you're on Amazon, look up a variable neutral density filter.
Okay, variable neutral density filter.
Yeah, it's like a variable sunglass for a camera. I use them on my cameras all the time because when you're shooting outdoors, you have all of those exposure problems, and that's what you can use to adjust for the overexposure issues that commonly happen outdoors. But get a variable since you don't know what your conditions are going to be.
Yes, yeah. All right, let's see now. I'm just about ready to show you the screen here. I have to play around with the exposure and the focus because, when your eye sees something that's small, your brain kind of makes lines out of collections of dots. So your brain puts patterns together that immediately make sense to it that, if you look up close at something, it wouldn't make any sense, but you zoom out and it suddenly becomes sensible. So, okay, I'm going to share my screen here. Just a minute. Trying to get everything balanced looking here. All right. Here we go. Portion of the screen. Okay. I wanted a portion of the screen, but I don't see the portion. You guys see a portion?
Calculator and a black blob.
Oh, okay. You know what? It's on my, gee, it has put the, okay, I got to switch my smart TV around here to get it to take another signal because it's now looking at my other screen. So the one I have, the P2 driving, is the one that has the windows on it. So I have to like, just a minute. I have to, okay. Whoops. Oops. Okay, here we go. All right, there we go. So let me drag this over to here. Now you should see some hash. This is the camera looking at the screen. It doesn't look that good. What's that?
We're not seeing it yet. It's all black screen.
Yeah, I know. I got to switch the source on the smart TV back over to the okay, there we go. All right, you guys can see that, right? So how this font is only 5 by 7 pixels per character. And I can adjust it. Let's see, I have some controls here. There's some games I can play, but it's just so frustrating because I can't, when my eye looks at the screen, it looks like perfect. It's just razor sharp, but when I try to put a camera on it, it starts blooming and, you know, it just looks spotty. But anyway, this is just a 5 by 7 font. So that means that every 8 pixels on the screen, you can have another line of code. And every 6 pixels across, you can have another character. Excuse me. Now, what this looks like, let me switch over to the actual.
So Chip, you also made a new font in this process, didn't you? This is not the Parallax font.
No, this is, yeah. And I've been thinking a lot about fonts, and I've kind of come to the conclusion that, you know, if you're going to show ASCII, we've made these character sets before that have all these complex resistors and capacitors and inductors and everything. You can build any kind of transistor. The trouble is the scale is never the right size. And by the time you shrink the font down, it becomes illegible and it's not right. So and maybe box drawing characters are good to be able to frame text, but beyond that, I think all we need to deal with is ASCII characters 20 through 70 hex. That's the space to the tilde that you see here, because everything else, now other, you know, areas have other characters that they need, but really this is like just the basis of all we need to worry about. If we go beyond this, we start getting into incompatibilities with other systems, and this is like universal, right? These characters are always going to work. So I've been thinking about doing some kind of like vector description, like simple vector description, where we can have documentation that uses like from meta commands, it can form like beautifully scalable vector drawings of things like schematics that could go right in your code and just be realized as text. And then in an editor, we could like kind of not show that text, but go into doc mode and just show the picture instead. Anyway, that's a future thing. But if you look here, you see these pixels, right? You see can you see my plus sign? You can see that, my cursor?
Yep.
So you can see here that if you have a diagonal row of pixels, just on or off, they're not going to be bright, right? Because if you think about the average density along the distance, it's less than a pixel wide. So you have to like pad that with some dithering to get a consistent stroke on what you finally see on the screen. So see the percent sign, right? Now, if we go to the screen, let's see, I don't see a percent, but right here, can you see my cursor here?
Yep.
Okay, same thing here, right? We've matched the stroke thickness of this diagonal with like the leg on the M and the H and all this. So this dithering is super nice because what it does is it buys you like virtually, it buys you effectively more pixels. And when you're a person looking at the screen and you're not seeing all this tiny, tiny stuff, your brain just completely fills in and it looks like really nice. Okay, so this is a little 5x7 font. And of course, this is the same thing that, like, you know, this is the same degree of resolution. Let's see, that, like, you know, classic little dot matrix display would use. Those are always 5x7 characters. Of course, they had, you know, gaps between things, which made them look worse. But by making this, you know, making a solid font with dither pixels, and there's only one level of dither in this font, right? It's just like I think it's 1/3, because I calculated that if you have 1/3 and 1/3, that makes like a diagonal pixel pretty well if you put them crossways. So it has the equivalent light of a normal on pixel. Is someone going to ask something? Okay, so I'll go back to this. Here's our dithered display, right? So I can turn off those dither pixels just so you can see the difference. Okay, and I'll re-download. So this is with dither, and this will be without those dither pixels. Huge difference, huh?
Yeah.
Very noticeable.
Yeah, I was so surprised. I mean, this really shouldn't be surprising at all, because this is nothing new in the world of computers, but it's amazing what a difference this stuff makes. So this enables the creation of like super tiny fonts, right? So watch this. Let's see, okay, let's go back to this thing here. I have, this is a 5x7. I have also a 3x5 font. Okay, so you see how choppy that looks, right? Doesn't seem like it could possibly look that good, but.
Well, it looks like the subway characters in New York City.
Oh yeah, made out of tiles.
Yeah.
Yep. Yep, it's low res. But watch this. If let me display that font. So that's the 3x5 with descenders. That's this one here. Okay, let me download this and then I'll switch over to it. Okay, so look at that.
No.
Now it's getting a little harder to read, right?
This is like getting fit for eyeglasses, 1, 2, or 3.
You know what? The descenders are missing. There's I've made some kind of mistake here. I think I needed to. Okay, so the descenders are missing because I didn't output the font right, but I won't mess with that now. But you get an idea that it's pretty decent, right? And if I turn the dither off on this, let's see, it's 90 and 128.
Now, where are you going with this project?
I'm not sure, but it's going somewhere. But I think it's going to have application to a lot of stuff that gets done when people are using like Stevens. There it is without dither, right? Looks terrible.
Have you tried using subpixel dithering?
So we're saying that
subpixel dithering, because on an LCD you have this very spatial pattern of the individual subpixels. You can actually use that to gain additional resolution.
Okay.
The downside is that you need something that you need to output in a way that it's exactly outputting 1 pixel to 1 pixel. So something like a TV, you have to kind of tickle it to not do any sort of overscan.
Ah, I see.
And of course, you have to match the resolution of the display, otherwise it doesn't work. But that's actually I think it's enabled by default on Windows. I don't even remember it. That's why if you take like a screenshot of text and when you zoom in, it's all weirdly colorful. That's what that actually is. It looks weird when you zoom in because it doesn't work that way. But if it's displayed properly, it will actually be incredibly sharp.
I see.
Chip, do you think you could apply this to an OLED display? Because those are by default small. And if you make the text more legible on a small display, that would be useful.
Oh yeah, this has total application to that kind of stuff. As long as we have some kind of grayscale ability, not just off or on pixels, we can do this. Now this is like the alt. I don't think you can go any further than this. This is a 3x4 pixel font. And think about that. That means that the character pitch on the screen is 4x5 pixels. So every 5 lines, you have a new line of code. Every 5 pixel lines, you have another line of code. And it's actually, it doesn't look as good. When I look at it on the screen here, it's highly legible, but it's a little less so, you know, because of all these issues with cameras. But this enables us to get, let me do a calculation here. On a 1080p screen, which I'm outputting to right now, right? This is, hold on here. Where's my calculator? Okay, we have 1920 pixels across divided by 5, 384 lines of code on the screen. So can you see my camera like the person camera?
No.
Right.
Yeah, on your.
Switch your video.
Okay, so you can't see. Okay, anyway, it's
I'm seeing it.
you see my, it's my personal camera, like,
Right.
but I mean, 384 lines of 270 columns, right? So you could divide that into 3 sets of 90 columns and get 1,152 lines of code on the screen at once. Which, if you're, you know, working on your code, you got to navigate through it. That's really handy because you can get your bearings straight. And just, I want to make a little editor so you can use the mouse wheel and just zoom in and out and very quickly go to where you want. So that's just a 3x4 pixel, and I'll show you what that looks like. This was like the strangest one. I didn't think it would even be possible to do this. The 8 was really challenging. Okay, so here we go. I'm going to move this thing there. You see this? Make it smaller so it's bigger on your screens. Look at the 8 right here. That was the hardest thing for me to figure out because I don't have, with only 4 pixels tall, how do you make an 8 that has like 2 circles? But that actually worked. And oh, okay, let me, I'm going to go into a mode where we're just going to look at the characters, like the character set. Hold on. Okay, now back to here. Okay, so here's the 3x4 font, right? But look at that. The 8 actually looks like an 8, and then the numbers have like fairly complex curvatures.
That's wild.
Yeah, and it's from so little information. I mean, you think about this, that you can fit a byte. So it takes 3 bytes to fully define one of these characters, right? Because you've got 4 vertical pixels and there's 2 bits per pixel. So that's 1 byte and you have 3 slices. So it's 3 bytes defines an entire character. So that this winds up being, you know, decently legible. And it's actually a lot better when you see it on the screen, but you can see there that it's usable. I mean, you could actually edit your code in this size. It would work. Now, at the other end of all this, I have, I made a larger font, a 7x11 pixel font, right? Which is bigger. And let me run that one. Yeah, so I mean, this is like picture perfect. Now at this point, with just 7x11 pixels, you've like fallen below human perception as far as, you know, being able to see most all of the pixels. On the V and the W, you know, you can see a little bit, but that's just a 7x11 font. So if you go 12 characters, actually, I would show this one at 16. It's showing it at a vertical pitch of 16 right here, but super legible And this is a bold font. What I want to do is from this font, make a thinner font so that I can do like bold and normal. And then I can also apply colors. Let's see here. I have the color stuff turned off now, but watch this. If I go, this was a big thing in my little driver, was to be able to make colors. Oh, it's going to bloom like mad probably, but here we go. I can change color on every character.
Wow.
And the way that, I'll show you one little thing about the driver that I thought was kind of neat. So here's the code that does the screen loop, right? This right here renders. Now this is in portrait mode because I'm running this monitor in, it's a 1080p and I've got it on its side, so I'm running it in portrait mode. So I'm delivering the characters from the bottom up for each slice, right? So if you look at this code, it's going to just, it's going to repeat for the rows divided by 2, because here's the deal. This RF byte right here picks up 2 nibbles, right? So for each character, you can pick from 1 of 16 palettes. So you can have like 16 color schemes, you know, per line. So here it picks up a byte. Here it sets it into the nibble of the command to the streamer, and then later on, it shifts that byte by 4 and then puts that next nibble in, and then in between it picks up the characters for outputting. And then it does, this is as fast as I can make it, right? So it's like Alt S and then boom, send it to the streamer. And then here it picks up the next character, Alt S, boom. So I had to code it this way so it does 2 characters, because it picks up 1 byte with 2 nibbles in it for the color codes, and then a byte of a character, and then a byte of a character. And it's looking up the font def as it goes through this. So it's only taking 5 instructions per character, potentially. And which is as tight as it can get, which means we can display our tiniest font with all the colors. Like the 3x4, 5 vertical pitch character font can be displayed with total color changes. Anyway, that was like, you know, figuring out that I have to, I don't have time to do like a get word or all that. I just have to go straight out of memory, pick it up, and then dump it. This dumps it right into the S field right here to the actual instruction. So, and then it's super fast. Anyway, that was like some work to get that worked out. But anyway, it makes, so we have the basis now for rendering like good fonts, you know, at high resolution on the P2. That's what this all amounts to.
So you're headed for HDMI driver with these fonts in them, right?
Yeah, now, yes, yeah, that's what I'm doing. Now, let me show you something. I have to get some HDMI. If you look at this thing here, I'm gonna, oops, got my lens here. Let me flip that back. So you see this thing down here. Let me untangle my camera. Ugh. Oops, there's, okay, hold on here. That thing there on the table, you can get that for like 18 bucks from Amazon. And what it does is it takes YPBPR. So I have the AV board here. And you can see on the screen back here, right? It takes the YPBPR and then converts it to HDMI, because we would have to be signaling at like 1.6 gigahertz to make that HDMI signal. But for, you know, under 20 bucks, you can buy this thing. Now I had a smaller one that I thought was cooler because it was way tinier, but it was horrible. It's like they did that cheapening thing on it where they backed out the bypass capacitors until it barely worked, and then they made a bunch of them and shipped them. And it was so noisy that it was actually creating, I could see it was injecting noise back into the P2 chip, and it was creating like snow noise on the screen. But this one has like sufficient bypass inside it because they spent the extra, you know, 2 pennies, and it works fine. It's probably like the same chips in both of them. But
Weird Chinese video boxes and good quality are things that don't mix.
yeah. And check this out. Green is used for sync. Now you can see the screen. Oh wait, let me make.
But which
I can see.
what color matrix are you using? Because I've had like 2 minor headaches trying to figure out the exact correct color matrix for YPVPR.
Oh, I'm just using what's in the European HDTV standard, or I think it was some European document. If you look at the stuff that's in the zip file, I have all those coefficients in there for the set CX, CY, or C.
Oh yeah, they're different for HDTV as well. That's another funny.
Yeah, they have a whole different matrix for that. Okay, so
Because I was of course working with standard definition stuff and that.
So remember, this is the good one. If you want to buy one, get this one. And the cool thing about YPVPR, it's so efficient. Look at this. You can see now, I can unplug the blue. Look at the screen. Whoop, the blue goes away, and then I can unplug the red. And now because it has sync on green. So now it's just gray level. So to me, it's like super high res, super clear grayscale characters, but on what you're seeing, it's all yuckied up and, you know, blotted out. It doesn't look good. But anyway, what this means is that this HDMI signal can ultimately come from one pin on the P2. And then you add in these others to get your colors. All right.
Can you show your converter one more time, Chip?
Yeah. And let me look really quick and see if I can grab that one that you should absolutely never get. Let's see, where did I put that thing?
I mean, if you really want a really good quality one, the usual one is called open source scan converter. That's the one that they that's really good quality, at least for like standard definition stuff. I don't even know if it takes HD, but that's the one that everyone goes mental about.
Oh, so it's really good, huh? Okay, so Otto, what's the name again? I want to write it down.
It's called OSSC. That will find you the thing. Again, I'm not sure if it takes HD input. They constantly update the firmware for that thing, so maybe it does like cook your dinner at this point.
Right. So this is a little VGA adapter. You can't see it, but it's in there. See that connector? This thing works great. So Foinex, this is pretty good. This is a good VGA adapter. But here's the lousy HDMI adapter. This is the one you want to avoid. It's got all this cable attached. Don't buy this one. This is not, you see, it's cute because it's nice and tiny. There's the HDMI connector. It has the component cables plus left and right audio, but this one is noisy. And it's just, I'm sure it's just because they didn't put enough capacitors in it. You know, it's just, it's a tragedy. I mean, a couple of cents would have saved it.
There's no end to the number of these you could buy and throw away.
Right. Right. But this one here, it comes with many different markings. I think they're made in China, of course, and you know, a lot of they come under various brands, but I think it's all the same thing. But that's a good one. It's a sufficient one anyway. Okay, hey, and John McPhailin, what was the name of that? It's something constant density filter. Is that it? Does anyone remember what
Sorry, yeah, it's a sorry, Chip. I was trying to find a component. It's called a variable neutral density filter.
Okay, variable neutral density filter.
Yeah, a neutral density filter will cut down the light, but it will not change color. It'll only change brightness.
Okay.
That's why they call it neutral density, because it will not change the color characteristics. It will only change the brightness. A lot of cameras have them built in. You'll sometimes see on cameras, you'll see a ND, that's neutral density filter. If you get a variable filter, that will let you, it has one fixed element and one rotating element. And so it's you can select how much to tune down.
I see. Okay.
But yeah, we use them in video cameras all the time because, outdoors there's often too much contrast between elements, and that will bring all that down, and we can then update it later as we do color grading.
Neat. Okay, good to know.
Yeah.
And here is like the super, super tiny 3x4 font in color.
I'd like to chime in that I'm glad you took this tangent. It's I've been wondering how to do something, these tiny fonts like that. There's a particular interface that I like on some desktop tools that well, the Qt browser, for example, it's a web browser, but you've got all your links all over your page, and you hit F, you hit a key anyway, and it'll pop up little numbers. It'll go through and dynamically number all the links with little tiny numbers next to it. So you can just hit that number, hit the character, and jump to and click that link.
Cool.
It's a fast way to navigate around screens without a mouse, keeping on the keyboard. And I'm not thinking of doing this graphically so much, but I've been doing a lot of text mode things and wanting to, enrich, enhance just a pure text mode interface. So this is a secret little tidbit I hadn't imagined how to do.
Yeah, I took, let's see, I have one image here I did a screenshot on Windows of just some stuff, some code I had in an editor that was open. And so watch this. Here we can see what Windows does. So here, let me make this thing smaller again. Okay. So there's something I just snapped off my Windows screen, right? Now, let's zoom in. See what Windows does?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, up close, that doesn't look like anything, right? Well, the @ symbol would be hard. But when you go back, when you zoom all the way out, your brain just fills in. And whoops, let's see. There's back to 100%. It looks perfect. Close to perfect anyway. When I have this stuff kind of finished up, I'll put all these fonts, and then I made a little program in Small Basic, not the Microsoft Small Basic, but the one on SourceForge that opens the bitmap file and extracts out the pixels. And then you just use those as like alpha blends. You have 0, 1/3, 2/3, and 100%, and 1, I guess you could say. So I'll put this stuff out there soon. I'll just post it on the forum.
And then to your point, John McPhailin too, is that I'll take this font and then these fonts, a couple of them, and incorporate them into the matrix driver as well.
Yeah. I mean, you have the perfect use for this because you have something that is not really high in resolution, but would be nice to show text on.
Mm-hmm.
And Chip, also some feedback from the chat is that as we get older, it's more difficult to read these fonts.
I know. For me too. I mean, some days my eyes are working pretty well and some days they just aren't. It's like glasses don't seem to make the difference. Now I know it is. That's right. I mean, we're not probably going to edit code at the smallest level at this, but it would be nice. It is nice to be able to just zoom way out, get your bearings, move around. I mean, imagine if you had super zoom capability, you wouldn't really need a scroll bar, right? You would just zoom way out. It would automatically add columns as there was, resolution on the screen to support it. And then you would just move the mouse pointer to where you want to be and then roll the mouse wheel up and zoom in on that section.
I mean, Visual Studio has that it has the sort of zoomed out view on the side, and you can kind of see the shape of the code.
Oh, yes. Yeah, I use an editor here that does the same thing. It's like, it's, it has a thing off to the right where I can, but it doesn't even, it doesn't show. It's probably like a 2-point font or something. It's really tiny. You can see the shape of your code, but you can't see the characters.
I think you can probably configure the size, but then it just gets like really big, and
yeah,
that's probably
Okay.
not.
So any more comments from
What I
Chip?
actually find very oh, I can.
Please, Ada. Yeah, go ahead.
What I actually find very useful is if you have that sort of marking either on that kind of map or on the scroll bar where you've changed the file. So you can like change a file somewhere, and it detects that you've changed it from the Git index, and then puts like a marker next to it.
Oh yeah, red or
That's,
something. Yeah.
Normally it's green or red for remove, and add, and blue for edit. I think it's in Visual Studio. Anyways, the thing about that is, I mean, aside from the obvious thing of showing you where you've changed something, usually if you're like looking at something else in the file, you want to go back to where you've edited something, and that's like the obvious way to do it. Oh, that's where the green blip is. That I always find very useful, but obviously it requires some sort of source control that can take track of that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I use the to-do extension on Visual Studio, and I mark regions in my code and flip back forward them because they show up as color marks on that mini view on the right-hand side. Does that make sense?
Yeah, the other thing is I think you can use the backwards and forwards buttons to jump between places you were. But at some point, the back button on my mouse has started double clicking, so now I'm in constant pain whenever I use my computer.
Understood.
All right, any more final feedback for Chip? Okay. So
wait, question, Terry. This would
Yes,
work
sir.
on your Christmas lights. Do you ever do any kind of dot matrix display?
I do. As a matter of fact, funny story. Yesterday, we were having some trouble getting a package delivered by DHL. So I have a 4-foot by 8-foot matrix display out front, and I had to put, "Hey DHL, this is our address."
Pointers.
Right? Yeah.
Cool.
But yeah, that could certainly work. The smaller fonts would that smaller font would work. It looked like a 5x7 font. Is that correct? That would work perfectly on the SSD 13 was it 1331 display, which is the small little display I use on the light controller.
Oh yeah, you're the OLED.
And you would see how to take those 4 pixel levels and like use them to either make colors or alpha blends, right?
Yeah, I didn't catch all of it, but I'm going to go back and watch this video again.
Yeah. All right. Well, I'll publish some code with the fonts and the things that extract the data from the BMP file so that you can have it all. But
okay, yeah. It seems like that could certainly be done. The problem with the fonts that I'm using on it currently is it's either off or on, and so you don't get that nice blending and softness around the edges and curves and things.
yeah, it's amazing what those pixels do and how the monitor is imperfect and your brain, your eyes look at it and your brain interprets it and it all kind of comes out in the wash.
Yeah. It's amazing.
Harry, feel free to give me a call if you want, because I have a version of your driver that I did, and maybe we can work together on that and solve it so that files will be compatible across both drivers.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think that'd be a great idea, John.
Chip, what would be the minimal font for Chinese character simplified set?
It'd be too big. It's funny to think about how things happen, like as far the development of technology. We have like a numerical character set that can be expressed in a 7-segment display, right? And then we have a printed like alpha set that can be done in as little as, like, here we did it in 3x4 pixels, but 5x7 is super adequate. So the Chinese character set has all these complex strokes, and it's like, I mean, think how far technology would have to be developed before they could even show one of their characters. And I know that has to be an impediment to developing technology when you can't even, you'd have to, it's like the wall becomes too steep to climb. Whereas for us in the Western world, it was easy because we had like simple glyphs that could be represented with, very little information, and then reusing things like a 7-segment display can show all the numbers, and you can add like 4 more segments and I think get all the alphas too. So we had an easy entry into technology development. It would have been like almost impossible for the Chinese to have gotten there because the wall would have been too high to climb. Because in the development of machines, you have to start being able to show information and have some kind of human interface. And if that was going to be too steep, I mean, they have to probably have like just symbols that they'd illuminate from behind or something.
The Japanese handled this by inventing katakana.
Oh, yes.
Oh, in the Mega Drive emulator, I'm actually using an 8x8 Japanese font because the game titles are sometimes Japanese. And I mean, I can't read it, but it is allegedly readable if you squint your eyes. The funny thing is that the narrow katakana, because for very funny reasons, you can encode either a narrow katakana that's like a half width and a full width one, as well as all the alphanumerics, the usual ones. They're actually like 4x8, so you can basically not read them at all. Sadly, I have to dig up a screenshot of this because I don't have a P2 connected at the moment. I have a P1 connected, which is very quality, but if I can dig up a screenshot of what that looks like, but just
Also,
imagine
we have Terry here, so I want to move on to Terry's lighting project too.
Very craft font. I know I have a screenshot of when I tested it at some point, but oh, it's looking bad. Oh wait, no,
Terry, are you ready to share?
Yeah, go ahead, Terry.
Let me see. Am I unmuted? Yes, I think you guys can hear me. Yes.
Yeah, nice.
Okay. Okay, good. All right. Well, let me go ahead and start out here. I'll just show real quick like the boot process on this thing. I can show right there. That is the whole light controller. It has 24 outputs on it. It uses the P2 Edge, and you can't tell from this angle, but it has an SD card in there. And it's using one of these little inexpensive SSD 1331s for its onboard display.
And what's the resolution? Is that like 128 by 64 or 96 or?
It's 96.
128 by 96?
No, it's 64 by 96, I believe.
Oh, okay. All right.
Yep. We'll go ahead and fire it up here. So we're working without a net. If this doesn't work, then it doesn't work. Sorry.
That's what demos are for.
Yeah. So all right, it found the config. It got DHCP'd. It is now on the network. You can see by the little green light on the right there, it looks like a little computer logo. That means that we are on the network. If I reach up here, I unplug the network card. That should turn red, and it did not. And I don't know why that happened. All right, we may be running into trouble already, so we'll see.
This is what happens when you go to show something. That's
know.
why I was late getting to the
Exactly.
meeting. I was trying to get everything lined up.
Well, let's see here. So in order to make it turn some of these lights on that we have plugged in next to it, these are technically these are WS2812s, often called 2811s. I'm using a little piece of software here called Jinx. You can see on the left-hand side of the screen. And what it does is it sends E131 data to the P2. And let's see here, I can start the output on that. And it is not working.
It's something
Yeah.
simple. It's something really simple.
I know. Most likely it's going to be me repowering it here. This is the first time I haven't had one actually boot.
You can cycle power. There's plenty of other things to talk about too.
Yeah, true. Let's see here, that IP, oh, the IP address changed on me. That's why. I apologize. I checked this just before I joined the call.
Why did it change? Is it dynamically assigned or something?
It is being dynamically assigned. And I do not have it set in my router to receive the same IP address. So it is currently 235. So we'll just change that guy right here. We only got to change it on a couple of them there. And start our output again. Okay, now, as you can see, the second light turned green, which means that it is now receiving E131 data. And if I turn on simple color, hey, we have red. So this is all being sent from the PC to tell it what to do. I can configure it. We can do a color scroll. We can change how bright it is.
So this is all DMX now, right?
Say again?
This is all DMX protocol then?
Yes, it's all DMX. In this case, DMX over Ethernet, choosing E131, which, like all of the Christmas guys, that's what they use because it's standardized and it just works. So something I wanted to show off in here is the web interface to this thing and how that works. So this is going to be 10.0. Well, it would help if I could type. And that is not the one we want to go to. That is the one that is out in the yard running right now. 235. And let me bring this browser over so that it will show up appropriately on the Zoom call. Can you guys see that?
Yes.
Pretty well.
Sort of. Text is not really readable.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, let me see if I can fix that for you guys real quick. I'll bring that over a little bit. How about that? Is that readable?
No.
No?
The blocks on the right side, Griswold, Billion 24, community support, those are legible though.
Okay. Well, let's see here. Does Zoom have a way for me to just share a whole screen?
Yes.
There we go. I will share screen 2. Is that legible?
Yes, clearly.
Okay, great. Okay, I don't know if that's too wide or not.
Nope, good.
Okay, all right, good deal. So this is the web interface on it. And so the thing is completely configurable via the web. Here are the network settings. Currently DHCP is enabled. You can assign it a static address if you want to. Typically all the ones that I have out in the yard, they have static addresses. And it's able to get on the, usually get on the network without any issue. That was a little bit weird with this boot up. Here are the E131 settings and the way that I have it configured. I'm using the number 2 E131 universe for the first output. You can additionally add, if you want to add other outputs to it, you can, or other E131 universes. So you can go beyond 170 pixels per output. You're limited to 170 pixels just due to the nature of E131 being based on DMX 512 and DMX 512 only having 512 data slots. Whenever you need a red, a green, and a blue, that leaves you with 510 whole data, usable within a data slot. But every one of the pins here has an output that can be configured. I don't have them all configured on this one. Okay, I have it configured up to output number 9. But it has that capability. Something that Ada and John helped out with is this master brightness control. And currently I have it set to 50%. And what it does is it will scale the brightness of all of the pixels. Typically with these types of pixels, you can run them at 30% and it'd be great for a Christmas show. I run most of mine at around 50%, and they're super bright. Whenever you buy these pixels, they are like a box of chocolates. You never know what you're going to get. They could be RGB, they could be BGR, they could be some other pixel order. And so I have a list here where you can choose which order your pixels are in, and you can do it individually for each of the outputs. And that actually come in really handy for my light arches that I have out in the yard. They are all BGR. So whenever you send them the first bite, it turns on blue instead of red. I didn't need to change anything in my software that sends data to them. So I use software known as Vixen lights. There's another popular one called X lights, and I've also used X lights with it as well. And that way you can have everything configured as RGB, and if you need to change the order, you can go and change it on your controller and not have to change what any of your show settings are, which is super convenient.
That's cool. This is where, Chip, this is where the move bytes instruction really helps out.
Oh, yes. Whenever I found mood bytes, it was like, oh my goodness, this is the best thing ever.
Yeah, because in the P1, it takes about six or 7 lines to do all those swaps, but it's just one in
yeah, it takes 2 clocks.
Yep. It does a great job. I was super happy to see that once I found that. It's like, this is great. To tell you a little bit about how the configuration is saved on this, it's saved on the SD card. And so I have this, if any of you are familiar with networking, you may be familiar with Cisco's iOS, which is on routers. And they have a concept of a running config and a boot config. And with a running config, you can make all of your changes. And if somehow you mess it up and you don't want to have to start all over again, you just recycle the power on it. And that's the way I have this configured. You go in, you change your settings, and you mess it up, you can power cycle it, and it comes right back up to the way it was before you started messing with anything. Now, once you've got it set the way that you want to, you can just click right here and save your running configuration to boot. Whenever I click that link, it saved it on the SD card, and that's how it's going to boot now. If I went in and changed the IP address, it would continue to run on the IP address that's currently configured. You would then have to save it to the boot config and power cycle it to bring it up with the new IP configuration. You can download the running configuration or the boot configuration. So if you just want to download what's currently in memory, you click on that. And of course, Edge is going to tell you, hey, this isn't a safe file because it's not coming from a known good source, or also it's not being sent over HTTPS. So whenever I open this up, you can see I've downloaded several of those. It's the running config, it'll be about 3K, I believe. Yeah, it's 3 kilobytes. And what this configuration file is hub RAM. I just tell the hub, I just go in there and say, hey, this is where all of my variables I use to control the light controller are. It starts at this address, which I can't recall what it is right off the top of my head. And you tell it, I want to do that all the way through the end of the configuration, and it just saves it to SD. Whenever it boots, it loads that into hub RAM at that same place in memory. And so the config files are all binary, and the upside of doing that is it's very simple. It's dead simple to make it work. The downside is if you change, you have to be married to that rigid structure unless you if you do an upgrade. So I tried to think of everything that could possibly be needed. And so far, so good. I haven't had to change that structure from the time that I made it. Let's see here. I'll go through here and pull that, see if I can show you where that's at, if that's something that you may be interested in. Yeah. This is where it boots, and this is where it reads the configuration file. It simply reads the data starting at pixel config and ending at brightness minus pixel config +1, and it says I found the config, and that's how it loads it into memory. It's real straightforward.
Ooh, an SD driver. Which one? Which one?
Yours.
Which SD drivers?
Yours.
Oh,
the one that works. It's yours, Ada.
Well, tell that to John then. It has it is function.
Terry uses flex prop. I don't.
No, I actually, this is all Propeller tool.
Okay.
Yeah, I whenever I started working on this, it's like, okay, I originally started with flex prop for everything, but I wanted to make sure that this would work with the Propeller tool. So it's all Propeller tool. And that was one of the things that I was trying to do with my driver for the SD, or not SD card, for the SSD 1331, was to make sure that it worked with both. And at last I recall, I think it works with both. It's been a while since I've worked with FlexProp, but this is my horrible code here, where it's going through the boot process. I left this in here commented. This is the pixel config structure, which is where it tells me, okay, here's the first pin, here's the pixel order, here's the hold off time for reset. This is where it's going to be in memory, where the pixel buffer is going to be, and that's dynamically created whenever it boots. And here's the pixel count on this pin. So the way that it sends that data out to those pins is there's only 3 cogs doing that. And what it does is it writes a byte out to 8 pins at once. And you don't really do a 1 or a 0 for these pixels. The way the pixels are done is the amount of time you hold the line high versus the amount of time you hold it low is how it determines if you have a 1 or a 0. To me, I'm sure they did it for a good reason. I don't know what that reason is. So it's quite convoluted. But I believe John also created an 8 output pixel driver. I haven't converted to that yet. Because there's a couple of special things that I had to do in mind to make it work the way that I needed it to with this.
Yeah, I think in yours, Terry, you're byte aligned, right? Because you're trying to compress memory, and I was long aligned in mine because I use long buffers for the pixels so that it could accommodate 32-bit pixels.
That's correct. Yes. And so that with the mine does not support RGBW. It may be able to. I just don't. I haven't wrapped my mind around all of the things, starting with the data flowing in and how that will affect how to calculate the number of pixels and that type of thing within the user interface. Yeah, so I have a little watchdog cog. It just sits out here. All it does is update statistics. So you can see on the home page here, it shows you how many decodes per second it's receiving in packets. And if you are sending it data that it's not configured to handle, it will discard it, and it increments this discard counter, and it will update every second. It will tell you, hey, you're sending me data I don't know about, which is not a great idea whenever you are doing that. It's not a great idea whenever you are trying to have it update quickly, because all you're doing is causing everything to have a bit of a delay. With the web server that we have here, it's all written in Spin. And let me pull that back up. And it's right here. It is quite a large section of Spin there. I know there are probably more complex ones, but essentially it just sets up listening on port 80 with the W6100 and waits for a request to come in. And the moment it has a request that's come in, it does all of these, it parses how big it is and that type of thing. And let's see, where are we at? Yeah, it's been a while since I've looked at this. It's been months. So one of the first things it does is it looks at the file name and it determines what header it needs to send back. Is this a JPEG that we're sending out? So it checks, it sends out the images. All the images you see on the web page come from the SD card that's on the edge. And it also, I have all of those headers actually configured at the very top as strings. And so you can see this is for a JPEG, a PNG, an XIcon. If it is CSS, it has cache control configured so that it won't pull that again. Same with, I also did that with the images, because that content's static. There's no reason to check and see if it's still good. And so it's cached. And what that does is that makes the web interface, super, super peppy. So let's see here. I can sit here and just reload it, and it just comes right up. Clicking between the different pages, it all comes up. All of the dynamic content that shows up, like where you're filling out forms, where you're dealing with these drop downs, the brightness control, even the stats that show up. Those are all manipulated through a JavaScript include. So trying to manipulate web information whenever all you have is Spin, to be able to do that efficiently, you'd have to build huge libraries to be able to do that. No one wants to do that. And hey, you have this whole JavaScript engine built into the browser that can manipulate the document object model, which is what all HTML pages are built on. As long as you give IDs to each of the elements in the page, JavaScript can manipulate it. And so that's where a lot of the heavy lifting is being done, is through JavaScript and the JavaScript includes. In the code, you can go down and see where I have these individual, well, let me slide on down. Depending on what the request is and what page is requested, I have all of these different smaller things that create the JavaScript for you. So this is where it like net post, this is where it populates the IP address. And so it's reading from the buffer that was uploaded, or actually this is where it gets posted. This is where it assigns the IP address from the browser. So the browser sends stuff, it goes into this read buffer. From there, you search the read buffer looking for IP address 0 equals, and it assigns whatever the value is after that into here. So that'd be the first octet, second octet, etc. Let's see, all right, so that's the web server. What are some other ones we have? These are the ones that do the various outputs, the .htms, and those are the posts. Okay, here are the ones that generate the JavaScript for the includes, like the E131 JavaScript. And what it does is it enumerates the E131 config and creates document.getElementById and creates all the JavaScript that manipulates that DOM. So whenever you're in a lightweight environment like this, I found that worked really well for being able to have dynamic web pages where you don't have to have something like PHP or those huge libraries to be able to manipulate that stuff.
I feel this is more complicated than just inserting the content into the document.
Well, I mean, you have to read it. You have to read it out of the configuration, but that's it. Yeah. If you look in the HTML of the web server, let's see here. So we'll go to E131 settings. Let's see here, use source. Where, Mike, can you still even do that? Yeah. So here's my source, and here's that U1, U2, U3, U4, U5, U6. And they get the values of those get manipulated.
Yeah, but why do that instead of just inserting the initial value into the actual thing?
Okay, well, if you want to create web pages dynamically, when that means that every web page, every HTML file, you'd have to write a custom. It would have to have some type of custom tokens inside of it.
Yeah, I mean that's really simple actually. I mean, look at this file. It's not, aside from the header, it's just like, okay, there's some content, there's like some wrapping around the content, and then you can just place the content onto the page. Well, of course, it's mildly obnoxious to do it if you don't have a way to interleave these sort of constant stuff.
Yeah.
And the
it requires it requires you to pull all of the HTML into memory and then update the tokens. I didn't want to do that. I just wanted to be able to manipulate the parts of the page that needed to be manipulated rather than read the entire HTML in, look for tokens, and replace them. And so that makes it, to me, it makes it more lightweight. I'm not, I'm not a huge fan of all of the myriad of JavaScript libraries that have been built and that type of thing. They are,
I mean, it's
have
fine
been
for
built
that
to make it
sort of
a
thing.
tool. Yeah, they've been made to make a tool to make other tools. And what I'm doing here is I am making a tool. It's very specific. It's not anything that could be used generically, but it is sort of a framework, a way of doing things, and it worked out pretty good. I mean, I was able to write the web server and get that JavaScript functionality running in just like a day or two. And that was the thing that was super daunting, is once I got it to where it could send data out, it's like, how do I parse data that comes in? How do I upload a config? So that's one of the things you can do. You can upload the configuration and press the upload button, and it will write it into RAM with whatever configuration you have saved. And you can then save it to the SD card if you want to, by saving the running config into the boot config. But yeah, so you know, there's a lot to it behind the scenes, other than just turning lights on and off. But I started on this just after Christmas last year, and pretty much most of my spare time has gone into trying to make this work. The last hurdle, all of you guys on the forum really helped me out, because the way I did my board layout, apparently some of the edges are a little sharp for the descending data to the upper pins to manipulate the pixels, and it was causing all kinds of glitches and problems that my wife couldn't see them, but I could. It's like it just turned blue for a moment. That's a problem. We need to figure that out. And it had too much drive. By adjusting the drive output, you know, it's like the P2 had this amazing thing built in that made it easy to solve that problem, and I just turned the drive down, and that problem was solved.
Terry, could you give us an idea? You've shown before some images of the scope of the lighting you control outside, and it's kind of crazy.
Yeah, so it's running right now, and
it's dark enough in Tennessee.
I believe it is dark enough in Tennessee. Oh yeah, I've got Christmas music playing on the radio. So let me swap over to my phone real quick, and I'll walk out in the yard and just show you guys what we've got going on. So I'll be gone for just a couple of minutes, and I will be right back. If I can figure out how to
get Zoom on the phone. I can send you the link if you want.
I've got the link. I can't. They use Zoom at work sometimes, and it's terribly. Okay, here's how I stop sharing. Okay, I will drop off this, and I will be on.
We'll see you in a little bit.
Okay, great.
Hey Ken, this is Martin. That code looked to be very interesting. Is it possible to get a link to that? Because I'd like to read through it so I can learn something.
Yeah, we could ask him when he comes back. I think it's his intent to share it.
Okay, and then later on, I'm going to be playing with that visual, whatchamacallit. If I run into
Visual Studio Code,
yes.
Start on the forums and we'll be there.
Okay, appreciate it. Okay, so
I got it working, and I know you program a lot more than I do. So
yeah, right.
Yeah, right is right.
Yeah, right. By the way, my first programming was on a teletype machine in 1973 in San Fernando Valley at my high school to some machine mainframe in I think Detroit. And we had the paper tape.
Wow.
And then it was a Hewlett Packard 2000, I think. And then an IBM 1130. And then later on, the IBM 36370 system. And then I got out of it for years until I got back with you guys. It was a long day. By the way, with that IBM 1130, you had to refrigerate the room down to 60 degrees before you could light it up.
Oh, Terry's returned. I guess he's outside now.
Yes. Can you hear me?
And we gotcha.
Okay, let's see here. How can I turn on the camera? Let's
see. You see some lights.
It is on.
Okay, there we go.
I've seen that.
Okay.
I'm going to do a little muting so his audio keeps taking over for us.
Keeping watch over their flock by night. Lo, the angel of the Lord.
So this is one of the quiet ones. Doesn't have a lot of the lights going on. Can you see all of those individual small lights?
Yep.
So that is about 1.5 acres.
Wow.
And so right now the big matrix display is showing the peanuts. The peanuts where they're doing psalms. I believe it's part of psalms that they're doing.
Now, does this have to be viewed overhead to make sense of it?
No. I do not know what I have done to my radio here. So.
Wow.
So there's the house. And all of those pixels on the house are individually addressable. There's our mega tree over there. It has 4 different colors on it. These are the 10 mini tomato trees that we have, and they have 4 different colors on them. Those are all 110 volt lights. Down here are the light arches. And so these light arches are 5 meters. Yes, 5 meters each. There are 10 of them. They wind up being about 5 feet tall.
But Terry, these lights that are spread all over the ground, they're in some kind of dot matrix, right?
No, they're just out on the ground.
Okay.
They're called lawn lights, and next year I hope to turn those into individual pixels.
Okay, gotcha.
And so here's the matrix display, and I don't have a good way of adjusting this, so you guys can see that very well. And here's where the I'm not sure which one's here. We have a singing guy here. We have 4 of them. For some reason, the radio. There we go. This will start up here a little bit more here in a minute. I'm probably a little bit too close to all of it. So the fence line over there, that's about 350 feet of light.
Wow.
And over here we have the other matrix display. The thing to note, every light you see here, a propeller is running it. Every one of these is a controller that I designed and am running. Now, the heavy lifting, as always, is done by the software, that's sending the data to these things. But
wow, a drone video would be helpful too, wouldn't it?
I'll fly my airplane over that and take a video.
Terry, we had a request if your code is shared on a GitHub.
It is. It's not in a GitHub. It is on Azure DevOps, and it's horrible. So my code is very, very bad. Just so you know, it's definitely not designed to be as part of individual libraries that you could use, but you could certainly look at it and get ideas from it. I don't write good, clean code like John and Ada.
Terry, when you compile all this stuff, how big is the memory image? I mean, accepting like data files and things like that, but just your code, how big is your code?
You mean just on the P2?
Yes.
I think I had like 128K left, something like that.
Okay, and then some of that's variable space, right?
Yeah, I mean that's how much was free. The majority of it is actually the pixel data.
Right. Okay. So that's just well, it's cleared at start, but it's not programmed. So your program is probably, I wonder how big your actual code is, like not including all the VARs, but just the code, like what comes in the DAT sections, pubs and the prize. That's like compiled code, but the var stuff is that tends to be bigger. I wonder if your code, how big it is. It's probably like, I don't know, maybe 40 or 50K, I would think.
Maybe. I don't know. I'll have to take a look and see.
Oh, you know what? Are you using Prop Tool or are you using?
Yeah, I'm using Prop Tool.
Okay, because to date, Jeff is about to release a version that actually does the all of the like memory visualization better. But if you go into Peanut does it accurately, and it'll show you like there'll be a band that's like, okay, this is your whole memory. Here's your code. Here's your variable space, and here's your free space.
Okay.
I just wonder how big your code space is.
Well, I can go in there and get Peanut and see if I can compile it and see.
Yeah, it's no high priority at all. I'm just curious because variable space tends to be way bigger than program space because you have arrays and things.
Yeah, and I'm certain that it probably is, just due to the fact that it has to have so much in there for to be able to have the pixel data.
Yeah, that's cool how you do that bouncing thing.
Yeah. My wife did all of these.
Wow.
So props on that setup, I guess. I like this. I like this sort of thing because it's so pointless in a way. Like this is a lot of lights. If you're just putting them up for like, because that's a very admirable thing, I think.
Yeah, it's just because, and I've been doing it for 10 years. I mean, there are kids that have grown up in the neighborhood, and so they've seen it their whole lives, which is kind of cool. There were, we almost decided like 3 years ago to not do it. And it's like, yeah, maybe this will be the last time we do it. And we had somebody actually stop by and tell us how much they really like the lights and appreciate it. It's like, okay, we're going to keep doing it.
As a kid, I've actually read a story where it's basically about like one person puts up like some Christmas lights, and then the next one, then his neighbor puts up more Christmas lights, and it's like it like escalates to the point where they overload the entire grid, and the entire city is doesn't have any power anymore.
It's like a tragedy of the commons, modern day.
That's why I like living in Burbank, because we have our own water and power system, and being an entertainment-oriented town, there's lots of lighting going on, and we don't have to worry about LADWP, belly up.
Unrelatedly, I have found the screenshot, TM, of the what the 8x8 Japanese font looks like. You may be able to see it on my video, maybe not. I don't know.
See it down there. Those look pretty detailed.
Okay, well, before we move to this, Terry, thank you for sharing. I know you must be cold out there right now. I don't know what the temperature is.
Oh, it's warm, but it's wet.
Okay.
Yeah. One thing I would like to show real quick is over here, I have one of the prototypes that I'm using for this sign. And you can kind of see how these are wired in. So there's our P2, and it's sitting out here in the rain, and it's been running for, it's been running since Thanksgiving without issue or requiring a reboot or anything. And then this guy down here, depending on which one he is, okay, this is probably a 12-year-old controller. And this is the one running the P1, and it's doing straight DMX. You can see right here, I have a loop back. I'm using the same piece of Cat5 to send DMX to it and then send it back out to everything else. And it only has like 6 outputs that are configured on here for the tree wraps. But I've had this one for like almost at least 10 years. The first one I built, I think, was 12 years ago. So yeah, they are all P1s and P2s out here.
Wow. Terry, how did you make those hoops that look like bouncing balls? Because the LEDs, you have to face them some direction, right?
Oh, okay. You're talking about the
Semicircles.
the semicircles?
Yeah.
Yeah. So the semicircles are pegs that you would get like at a hardware store.
Plumbing supply parts.
And I put a pixel strip in it.
Oh, okay. Just packs like plumbing.
Yeah. So it uses that as a diffuser for the light, and so you can see it 300, on either side of it. It illuminates.
Nice.
Great
And
idea.
I don't know if you can see the video on that or not. It may be too bright. But that's one of the videos that gets played on the Matrix.
You need a constant density filter for that.
Yeah, I joined right about the time that conversation happened.
Well, this is the problem, is that most of the screen is dark, and so the camera wants to brighten everything.
Right. Yeah. I don't know if I can.
Yeah, there you
That's
go.
better,
It's getting better now. As you get closer, the camera will fix its exposure.
It's a variable neutral density. Sorry.
Oh yeah, there's the GE logo and our Channel 2 logo. So this is a song that was done in 1979 by a guy named Frank Mills for one of our local television stations, and it's called Music Box Dancer. It became actually an international hit, and it was a Canadian that happened to get his launch out of Nashville from that song, and so I added that into the show.
Wow.
All right. So that's all I wanted to show.
Okay, how do you get the hoops to stand up?
I use rebar. So I have skinny rebar here.
Oh, okay, I see. Oh, I see. From the ground, and you just zip tie it or something.
Yep.
I see.
Lots of rebar in this display.
Hey, Terry, this is fantastic. Wonderful job.
Agreed.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah,
So
there's a
thank you
lot
guys
in the
so much.
chat saying great work. And Dennis said you are figuratively and literally outstanding in your field. Inspiring project.
It's the thing that has taught me the most about the propeller, believe it or not, is trying to make this project work.
You got a dumb question. How many amps are you burning?
I haven't looked lately. We have changed a lot from incandescent to LED. Last I checked, it was 42 amps.
Wow. So
At
what's your
220?
What's your power bill for December usually?
Oh, a lot.
42 amps.
Even though we are in TVA, it has been as high as $450.
Oh, that's nothing.
It's not bad.
I mean, what do you pay per kilowatt hour?
In Tennessee, that's bad. I think we pay 11 cents a kilowatt, something like that.
Oh, we're like 3.5 times that.
This is why you don't see this in California.
Exactly.
Yeah, so you can see that shockwave effect on the house there. I don't know if that's coming through or not.
It is.
And so all of those are individual addressable LEDs.
Wow.
Yeah, it's interesting you're doing a thing with shadow there versus with light. I'm actually doing a project right now for a local special effects shop that's building a life-size ET. And so I'm building a panel because, ET's heart light, they want to do that. So I'm building a panel that fits in ET's chest that's WS2812s and then animating portions of it to make it look like his heart is moving.
Oh, cool.
Interesting.
Well, this gives us something to aspire to next year. We all need to jump in with some projects now.
Well, Ken, can we use your roof right there and start with that?
We have what's called a dark night neighborhood here. It's not allowed.
I'm in Arizona. It's a dark light state.
It is kind of fun that Terry mentioned using a program called Vixen a long time ago, I became friends with the guy who originally created Vixen, and he actually wrote us a couple little drivers where we could use Vixen to create digital sequences that we could load into a basic stamp 1 controller just to do digital outputs.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, so we did that with the basic stamp 1, and Disneyland used that all the time. And of course, you know, then the basic stamp 2, and you know, they have lots of Propeller 1s now that they do that with. I also did a special bit of code again with the young guy that wrote Vixen. He wrote a driver for me that I used at Disneyland and at Legoland. And now I'm trying to get Disney to consider the P2 because, well, why not? It's a nicer controller.
Can you post that code?
Which code? Are you talking to me or are you talking to Terry?
I'm talking to you, that code about that you started about Vixen, so somebody can take a look at it and learn from it.
Yeah, what I'll do is because I did this for people that were buying controllers from EFX Tech. I'll post in the forums a zip file that has the older version of Vixen in it, and it has those drivers built in.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, what it does is Vixen is a kind of a grid oriented thing. So think of it as like a spreadsheet, and you know, you have outputs that are lines, and then you have columns. So you can put a value into there. For the really simple controllers like the basic stamp 1 and the basic stamp 2, we would just have it on or off. Once we started working with the Propeller, then you would put in lighting values, and then you could use things, for example, like in Vixen, you can drag a selection of cells and say, okay, go from off to on, and it will do the calculations for you to give you, for each frame. Because think of each column as a frame. And so you'd set your frame rate. And that's what we did in the basic stamp 1 and the basic stamp 2. For Disneyland, they were doing really simple kind of digital animations. And so we would say, all right, we want to run 10 frames a second, and then here's the output pattern we want. And they did that for lots of little props and widgets that they have in the park. But I'll post that up in the forums.
Thank you very much.
Excellent.
Yeah, Vixen is a nice program.
I'll turn off the recording too, so we have a reasonably sized YouTube video, and then we can carry on talking about whatever we want.
And is Terry back again?
I am. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Yeah.
Do you have a website describing some of the controllers and things